some 4 million Americans expected to fly on this weekend and beyond during the 4th of July holiday season. There have been so many flight disruptions that some are criticizing the FAA's performance. In fact, after an extensive flight delay series that took place this past weekend, United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby wrote in a memo to his employees, he said, quote, "The FAA has failed us," end quote. Powerful statement. Is this yet another example of Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg's just simply not being up to the task? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Doug LaMalfa. He serves on several House committees, including the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. He represents the 1st Congressional District of California. Congressman LaMalfa, great seeing you again, my friend. Welcome to Washington Watch.
Jody, always a pleasure to be on with you. Thank you, and I appreciate Tony Perkins' efforts as well. You have a great network there. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and we do. I'm honored to be part of the team. Listen, let me start with that comment from the CEO of United Airlines saying that the FAA failed us last weekend. Would you agree? What's your reactions to that statement?
Well, ever since the COVID deal, we have seen a lack of impetus to get people returning back to work that work for the federal government. I've heard accounting of IRS offices, for example, to have hardly anybody showing up, yet there's a massive amount of work that needs to be done for getting people's taxes processed and their refunds out. And so it wouldn't be really any different as much as people have been incentivized to not come into work at the federal government level. It's a detriment. And then when we've seen the training center defunded a little bit, and we don't have the pipeline of folks that need to come in and do the work for us at the FAA at the various levels, where it's the traffic controllers or all the other related infrastructure of that and the TSA, of course we're going to run behind. COVID shouldn't be an excuse for that. As we found out with COVID, there was a big federal government overreaction on that. People could have safely done a lot more than was allowed. So there's a whole ripple of things that have been a problem, and we need to fast forward on this. And so I hope in the appropriations process and FAA reauthorization and such that we can build that back up and fast forward more folks getting through the training academy on getting more folks into the back into the FAA and the air traffic controllers and such, because travelers shouldn't be subject to this sort of delay.
Well, this is not the first time that there have been problems with the Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg. We've had train wrecks, we've had so many. It seems like one issue after another, and they all seem to me, at least, to be met with a rather tepid reaction from him and his department. How would you assess his overall performance?
Well, it's disappointing, and when the president and his team put people in place basically to check boxes on what their status is versus what their competency in, this is what we're going to get. And we're seeing that through a lot of aspects of presidential appointments. And when you're appointing people on the basis of their color, their gender, their sexuality, whatever, it needs to be the best people. And I hope it can be any of the above on that, but they have to be people that are ready to step in and do a job. And we've suffered for that economically, like that. So the secretary, I think, is in over his head. And, it may be a provocative statement, but by the airline there, but it's probably largely true because they got to deal with that on delayed flights. I think in one case they were talking about how bad it was coming out of Newark, New Jersey and such, where 40% in, 75% out were not available to them. That's ridiculous. And so let's get the staff back up to a level where travelers will be accommodated by this, especially during holiday periods like this.
Absolutely. I saw those same statistics. And there's reason for the CEO of United and others to be upset with this. That's the world in which they live. If I can, Congressman, let's switch gears a little bit. You continue, and we're deeply appreciative, you continue to sound the alarm about the dangers involved with all the gender surgeries for minors, and that amounts really to sterilization and mutilization. And you recently held a briefing about this. Tell us about that briefing.
Yeah, we had one there in one of the committee rooms right there in D.C. We had two witnesses, a young woman who was just turned 18, I think, who was led into this path. I think starting at about 13 years old on being convinced that she can change her gender, and that would be a solution for her life. And then a fellow who's a little older there, his name is Walt Heyer, and you can read his story on the internet there about what he's been through. He's about 82 years old, and he's been being basically lied to, Jody, for about 30 years on this being a solution for whatever he's feeling or whatever might be bothering him in his life about that. And and he regrets it. The young lady, she regrets it, and I don't hold any I guess I don't hold any frustration with them. They made decisions, right? And we need to pray for them. We need to support them so that they're also and they're going online here, putting themselves on the line, trying to say, to tell people about their story is really courageous of them, and it's going to be helpful long term. You see the work Matt Walsh is doing as well on all this. His video, "What is a Woman?" and all the people he's interviewing out there. You see people with deep regret, but they've been lied to. And Jody, especially with kids, all right, especially with minors, we need to protect them. Now, if adults make these adult decisions, that's a little bit different. But I think those that are convincing them this is going to be a solution for their life, whether it's certainly minors and whether it's for adults, they need to be held accountable that when they find out that this is a lie, that yes, you can surgically or hormonally, take some kind of drugs, hormones, whatever, to somehow change the direction of what your gender is. There's something else going on here. There's something else that they need counseling for. They need to be talked through it. We had a situation right here. I'm in Chico, California, where a 11-year-old girl was in school, and she went to a counselor, wanted to talk, in good faith with the counselor, wanted to talk about some feelings she's having, maybe some confusion. And who can blame a kid these days that they're getting bombarded on the internet all the time, on social media and on TV and media, maybe by other kids, of hey, maybe sex changes for you. And that's about one of the first things they seem to be asked by teachers and counselors, like, well, are you feeling like your gender? Do you feel like maybe you're a different gender? Well, it probably wouldn't even pop into their mind. And so we're over sexualizing our kids these days. Other than just the basic birds and bees, we're all taught about 6th, 7th, 8th grade. They're hitting all this stuff on sexual activities and on sexual choices and changes. So we got to protect them at all these different levels, especially minors. And that's why I'm so adamant on this. So the hearing we had in DC on it, they were telling us about how they've been lied to and deceived, and have been telling people by the medical community and others that would counsel them that, oh, this is a solution for you. And you find out it wasn't a solution. It actually puts them in a worse way than maybe what they could have been counseled with on dealing with their feelings and gender dysphoria.
Absolutely. Congressman Doug LaMalfa, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue and so many others. It's amazing. These teenagers aren't even old enough to buy cigarettes, and yet they're able somehow to make these kind of life-changing decisions. Congressman Doug LaMalfa, 1st Congressional District, California.
We have to protect them.
Have a great weekend. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jody.
Thanks for being on board.